the size of their customer base, and so they don't do a lot unless we can put something in place that will get their attention.
Mr. Chairman, maybe if there's something, maybe there's one thing we can add back into the state law that will, our constituents
Now we're talking.
Can get the message to our state lawmakers. Maybe there's just one thing we can put back in that law,
Right.
to help us with, think, what is one thing we can do with that law, and maybe get us back on track. You said there's three things. If there's three things, what can we do to our local law? But maybe there's the three things we can do with our state law.
And I agree.
And could you
Give us some
be thinking about suggestions as to what we can go to the General Assembly with?
Yeah.
Of course, I'm not sure we have the money to lobby the General Assembly the way that Comcast does, but anyway, we can at least let the people who represent us know what their feelings are. That's a very powerful. That's a very powerful group, and so I'm not sure how much But again, it's nothing worse than a failure than not trying. So we need to do that. All right, Ann.
Okay.
Any other discussion with
Open the public hearing, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. No more questions? All right. We'll declare the public hearing open on the proposed amendment of Chapter A-130 of the Code of Caroline County Cable Television Franchise. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to this amendment to the Code of Caroline County? If so, please come forward and state your name and your voting district. Seeing no one coming forward, the public hearing is declared closed. I'm
don't
sorry,
close it.
we're not going to.
Don't
No.
close it. Leave it open.
All right, what is best? What is best?
It doesn't really make a difference.
Yeah.
We're gonna
What is
re-edit.
best?
Yeah.
Re-advertise.
I mean, it's got to be re-advertised.
We're gonna have to re-advertise anyhow,
All right.
so you can close it.
Public hearing is declared closed. Okay, you're going to bring back to us, hopefully, not too distant future, some conditions. All right.
Do you need a motion to re-advertise?
I'm not sure when
Let her
you
get
We
some-
don't need it because
Okay.
it will be required
Okay.
by the statute.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Popowitz. Unfinished business, discussion of status of T21 grant for Bowling Green Pedestrian Park project and results of structural study of former Commissioner of Revenue's office. Mr. Wilson, it's good to see you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is your update of options regarding the enhancement grant for Victory Park. The county administrator and the director of economic development met with VDOT's federal program manager and enhancement manager, local assistance division, as well as consulted Caroline's representative to the Commonwealth Transportation Board regarding various options related to the park project. And from those conversations, we have a few points that we'd like to share with the board. One option that emerged, of course, is that as the park project is currently funded, the park project can proceed. Failing to act within 2010 will certainly result in the funding being rescinded. Future funding may be problematical as a result of not utilizing the funds in some capacity. We have also recently been told that new applications will not be accepted in the year after this December 1st. Only a repeat of or second phase or third phase of existing grants. So the teeth of losing the opportunity to file new grants seems to be a little less severe than what first appeared. Option two is the funds may be shifted from the Victory Park project and applied to other ongoing and approved enhancement projects. The Port Royal project would qualify under this understanding. A request for this action would be needed and approved and need to be approved by the Commonwealth Transportation Board. As the rescinding period would take effect in 2010 and new submissions for enhancement grants are deadlined for December 1st, 2009, it is theoretically possible for other grants to be in play for Victory Park approved monies to fund in addition to the new grant awards. Additional grants require, of course, additional matches. Staff vetted potential grants with VDOT enhancement staff, and it was concluded by those who administer the enhancement grants, which are federal grants, that both a proposed boat ramp and cannery rehabilitation will not qualify for funding if submitted. However, the county's CTP representative expressed some potential in the boat ramp project, though additional dialogue would have to take place between the CTP representative and enhancement staff. Apparently, if that has happened, no encouraging news has emerged from those talks. A third point, staff suggests perhaps a project that appears to qualify for enhancement funds. The creation, for example, of a county museum with significant transportation ties. The current county museum, with a redefinition as a transportation museum as well as a community museum, could use Victory Park funds. The way this would work, the county museum would file a grant for the county museum by December 1st, 2009. That, as you can see, is not much time. If approved by VDOT in early 2010, we would suggest for a very small sum, requiring a very small match, the project will be able to receive the transfer of funds from the current grant project at Victory Park. If the county donates the museum space to the nonprofit, the value of that space will act as a match for the grant, an in-kind match, negating the need to use your cash holdings to meet the grant match. For example, if we determine that the space is worth $75,000 or $100,000 after appraisal, that's what we would have as a match for that space, which would be approximately what you would need to match $458,000. Actually, your match is $114,000 for $458,000. Other monies, however, can be taken from the park project and also given to the Port Royal project. You can do both, but that, of course, would require a match if you apply it to Port Royal. In this way, the grant money can be kept in Caroline County and distributed to projects approved by VDOT and already supported by the Board of Supervisors without spending as much or perhaps even any actual cash for a match for your grants. The in-kind donations serve this purpose. And any structural improvements that would be brought to the building, employed for the building, would have to be applied only to the space that was being used by the museum. In this way, we had hoped to craft an idea that met most or all of the board's goals, keeping the money in the county, achieving a nice project for the county that might do some material good, which I think the museum would probably do, and at the same time not requiring you to spend money that you already have set aside. This strategy would do that. I would say that it's not guaranteed we'll receive the grant for the museum if we write the grant hastily. However, I think our chances are better than even that we would succeed.
Okay, my first question has to do with the current funds.
Yes, sir.
And the current project. When Mrs. Carter spoke to, I believe it was Maxie now, about this issue a month ago, maybe, she was concerned that we were on the verge of losing this grant.
Yes, sir.
What are the timelines that we have to meet just to protect the $454,000 that has been given for this Victory project?
We have asked that question too, knowing that would be important to the board. What we have been given as an answer is that there is not a precise time. However, it does appear that were we to use the museum grant concept as a way of trying to secure this money without spending money, cash, to match it, it appears the timing would be within what our transportation board representative feels is reasonable, and we would have a chance to actually make that happen.
My concern is our current transportation board member may not be the same transportation board member we're dealing with come 3 months from now.
Yes, sir.
And they may not have the same same thought process. Any questions of Mr. Wilson?
Mr. Wilson, in your option 2, you suggest that we shift all existing funds to a new county museum. Option 3 is kind of partial. If we were to follow this option 2, we would necessarily be creating a new museum structure, because the museum may or may not be looking at transportation at all in its concept. How would that work?
Actually, it would work subtly.
Subtly?
Subtly. The current museum, as it's structured and as is envisioned by those who are on its board, would function as it is now. That would not change. However, we would have to insert a transportation component. And frankly, Caroline County has an excellent argument for doing that. This is a confluence of a number of trails that are recognized by the state. Civil War trails, the John Wilkes Booth Trail, which we participate in fact, we're the terminus of that trail, so it makes it especially strong to be here, and the Washington Rochambeau Trail, all congregate at this, essentially at this point. So it gives us a strong argument to make an interpretation there, which is what part of this grant would do, in that building. It would not be exclusively dedicated to those trails and to that message.
So, I guess the real issue would be to define subtle, but I think that's something we'd have to do offline. All right, that's one possibility, which is kind of interesting. Okay.
Other questions, comments?
Yes, sir. And I guess I'll take the blame for bringing this to a head in the manner in which it's at right now, and that my biggest concern was the $100,000 and the economic situation we were faced with, and again tonight we're looking at another $10 million to renovate the high school. And I met with town council at length at their last council meeting and had this discussion with the entire council, and their sentiments were, if the $100,000, if we're going to spend the money because we've borrowed it anyways, then
It's a grant we have borrowed.
none of the $100,000 match. The match is borrowed. If we're going to do that, then their thought was the grant has been secured for the park. The museum is adjoining that particular park. One of the points brought up during that discussion was the parking lot and the back of that building are where there are issues anyways. The parking lot's got to come out to fix it. If I'm understanding some of the water issues that Mr. Popowitz has talked about and Mr. Boyce has talked about, that we have a drainage problem, a leakage problem, and a moisture problem in a building due to probably the parking lot and drainage there anyways. That we could accomplish a museum component, the park component is sort of the triple point of what has to be done, and with the money that's already secured. And I guess that's my comment. If we're gonna go forward and spend the match, because we've got it and we're going to do something with the $454,000, then everything's in place to move forward, and we still accomplish the museum, the park, and some of the structural issues with the courthouse, with the Commission of the Revenues building.
Could I ask one more question, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
And then I'm finished with my question quota for the night. Where are we, and this may not be Mr. Wilson, maybe more staff, but where are we with the old jail proposal? I know we allowed some folks to go off, and we gave them a year to come back. Isn't that year up, or?
It's close. I believe March. I believe it's the agreement.
March?
The agreement runs through March.
Okay, so March of this year.
I've not seen too much of anything. They have had a fundraiser or two, I believe, but
Okay.
I'm not aware of any proposals they have to fix up the building.
I just thought that was maybe another component to this whole thing. If we do a shift here or there, we could, renovate the Commissioner of Revenues building, the old jail, provide some other things. We may not be able to do it as it was originally presented, but I think we'd accomplish 90% of those goals, maybe 75% of those goals, and do some other really nice things. Because sooner or later, if we don't do anything, the last brick's gonna fall off that old jail and it'll just be a big piece of steel in the middle of the, park or whatever it is. So we should maybe kind of factor what's gonna happen with that into this whole thing. Because for another 20 feet of brickwork, we could tie that into the existing building. Architecturally, structurally, you're just tying the two together. They're not going to balance on top of each other. You just build a wall up to the other one, and that's it. But I mean, that's just something I just wanted to, I don't know if you considered that. It's something I kind of thought of while we were sitting here that maybe we should have as part of our equation.
Well, Mr. Thomas, you can include the jail into the park because it's adjoining contiguous. And
Right.
It would not be applicable to the museum, I do not believe. It's simply not transportation oriented at that point.
Well,
So unfortunately, I don't think we could quite swing that
I
arm.
thought you said subtle.
There is subtle, and then there is overly elastic. It's
I kind of like to dance on the edge, but subtle would be extending that building, and the jail would be your entire transportation concept. You got 2 floors, jail. You could talk Civil War, John Wilkes Booth stayed across the street, or you had a drink at the bar across the street, whatever it was. Upstairs, Washington, Rochambeau. Work with me, Gary. I'm being creative here.
I think it's brilliant, but unfortunately, I'm not sure our friends at VDOT are quite receptive to that.
All right.
All right, what is the board, are we wanting to move ahead with the project as it's presented? I'm assuming that the $500 and some thousand that's available, the 454 and the 114 that the county borrowed to match the ICE-T grant, or the T21 grant.
I thought
It was
it's 75-25 match.
80-20.
80-20, I guess it
80-20?
was.
Okay.
I'm assuming that was applied for knowing that it was going to take that much money to complete Victory Park the way that it was initially thought of happening.
I was not an engineer in that part of the process. However, I believe
I don't think you are now.
that you can count on that, sir. It's, I think again, that was a flexible number in that there was a concept that Mr. Ramsey and others had looked at and thought that they could accomplish various things, and those were essentially enumerated in their study. And you could probably accomplish what they set out to do with that money now.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Popowitz.
One of the comments I do want to make is, and I understand the town's position, but some of the things for the county have changed as well over in that area. I think we need to take another step back and look at that. At the time, I don't think we were planning on moving the administrator's office and treasurer and all that. And I don't know that the total concept is going to be necessary, for lack of a better term. I think that if we do go forward, that we need to take another look at maybe the road closure, the parking lot, and how that's situated, and adjust accordingly. Because I think the sheriff's department pretty much has adequate parking at the facility now, and there are some issues with the water on the back side of the building where it's coming into that basement area. But that's certainly not from I don't think it's from the current parking lot. I think it came more from something we did a few years ago that wasn't too smart, removing some stuff over there. So even though we got this waterproofing in the basement and things like that we have in our packet, there's some other things we need to look at on this building, I think, and maybe have another crack at this. And like I said, I want to remind the board that some of the issues that you're trying to deal with at the time, with traffic and with parking and stuff like that, some of that has gone away. Not all of it, but some of it has gone away.
Mr. Akers, if I may, I do think the way the project was designed is that you have a sum of money that you can design this park and do the things you want with it as you see fit. It is not in any way predetermined or determined by staff or a committee. It exists as a sum of money for you to proceed, if you would like to, with the park and design this park and the use of the money as you see fit. So the flexibility is yours on that, if you wish to use it there.
The other option is to say we're not going to do anything with the funds, we're going to turn the funds back to VDOT, as well as we're going to refund $114,000, and we're going to pay that back of the loan that we took out and move forward.
Yes, sir.
I mean, that's an option. If that's what the board feels that we should do, we'll do that as well.
Well, like I said, if I may,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think that's a smart move, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't do something. What I'm saying is that, and I think Gary's probably answered some of that with his comments, is that the concept, the total concept that we looked at, doesn't necessarily fit today. And if we do this, we do move forward. I think that we need to move forward and do make some changes to that facility. If that includes doing some repair work to the museum area that we're looking at, certainly that's something I want to do. I don't necessarily agree with the total project cost. I'm looking at the county forces doing some of this stuff, and I think that in that basement area, I don't feel comfortable having our forces do that, and we need to take a look at that cost as well. So I don't know that it really affects what we're trying to do here, but there's some things in here that I'm still concerned about, and I'd still like to see the Victory Park change a little bit, because I think it needs to, because we don't have the same need as we did in 2006.
And Mayor Stork, I guess you were involved in the initial and somehow putting together because nothing was ever finalized on the park. I mean, we certainly had thoughts. Yeah, well, they were.
We did a couple conceptual drawings.
That's what I was going to say. They were just.
I did not have a part. I do have a copy of the original. I don't know if you can call it a grant application, but it was. This is what was submitted to the Commonwealth Transportation Board, and there is a drawing included with this. I really don't think it's as much as open to interpretation as we would like it to be, because there was a drawing submitted with this that shows a dotted line that outlines the area discussed, and things have changed, but things haven't changed. In this grant, it was a pedestrian-friendly safety issue, green space, transportation issue, and the grass field in between the church and the new courthouse was proposed to be a parking lot, which parking is an issue on court day. It was closing Ennis Street so that you could enter Ennis Street from Chase Street and access that new parking lot, or you could access Ennis Street from Courthouse Lane and enter the parking lot where the sheriff's complex is now. And then there was some notice given to that Sallyport area, which has changed, but needs to be incorporated in. There is a well-defined area that this Commonwealth Transportation Board approved this grant for. So I'm all for tweaking it if we can, but I don't know that we can, I don't know how much tweaking you can do to this, because if you look at your initial plan, and I applaud Mr. Wilson, because I remember at the time thinking, boy, that was really almost stretching it to get this grant from the Commonwealth Transportation Board for this Victory Park. And it's such a small area of green space and park. But that area in between the new courthouse and looking towards the back of the businesses on Main Street needs some improvement. It's a safety concern, and a grass plaza in there would be nice. And the parking for the county's buildings would be nice. But I think we need to look back and look at what you won this grant on. It is a plan in place. It's not we were given $500,000 and now decide how you want to spend it. I really don't think that. But you know, if some things could be incorporated into this new museum, which we're all for, wonderful. But there is a plan in place. You know, you did give them a scope of work, and we like the concept.
Any question?
Mr. Chairman, you know, I remember that we went back, we purchased the property next, toward the building down, bought the property, tore the building down, you know, all along saying we were going to use it for parking. And what I remember was we said, well, you know, it would cost us, you know, $90,000 just to do the parking lot. And then we won the grant for another $400,000, so we were really ahead of the game because we really needed the parking lot anyway. And that was what it all started from, was the parking lot, if I remember correctly. Right. And, you know, I think we definitely need parking lots in town, but and I agree with the mayor, but I think one thing that's crucial is we got to get the users together and refresh our plans with the users of that complex. And I don't think we've done that yet. And that's kind of my thought. I think we really should have the users of that complex area to get together and talk about if some things have changed and how do we tweak it. And that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think that's what I was trying to say right there. That was Mr.
And I guess it comes down to, are we going to go forward with the original plan? And if we're going to go forward with the original plan, Mr. Roselle, you're exactly right. The stakeholders have to sit down and decide how all this is going to come together and what can we and can't we do. And you're right, Ms. Bobby, that we've got to figure that out, because there are some things that have changed that we could probably incorporate.
Yeah. So
I guess what it comes down to is, are we back to option one, or the original application? If we're back to the original application, then what the mayor said was, you know, the town would like to be a stakeholder. The county, you all, before I came to the board, had a plan for the parking lot, which is still direly needed. Then we need to just go forward with what we've got and get everybody in place to plan and move forward, so that we can actually start making some progress before the deadline.
Correct.
So I guess if I made a motion to proceed with the park as planned and bring the stakeholders together and move forward so that we can show some substantial progress, that would be a motion in order?
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second to Mr. Seeley's motion?
I'll second.
As planned originally?
Motion made, Mr. Seeley, seconded by Mr. Popowitz. Discussion on the motion.
Well, we did have the tweak in it.
I think the mayor has said, the town council voted the other night, or certainly expressed in discussion the other night, that they'd like to see something done with the front of the museum, the old Commissioner of Revenue's office, to at least improve the appearance of that. And I think that is probably what you're talking about, the tweaking, Mr. Seeley, that's what you're speaking of, with the original plan.
I guess before we go forward, if you don't mind, can we go ahead and see if the VDOT folks will consider the repairs that we have here as part of that process to tweak that?
We can ask them that.
Yeah.
I think it becomes very difficult to get them to agree simply to repairs that
Yeah.
don't further something defined as a
Well,
park.
with the assumption that when the museum comes, it would be the transportation museum and other things, and see how much more we have to do
Oh, I
to
see.
tweak.
I see. Yes, we can ask those questions. We can also still file a grant for the museum, apart from the board's decision to proceed with the park. If the board would be interested in making a donation of the property to offset a cash donation, that is an option.
Could that be phase two?
It possibly could be phase two. It would serve to reduce your cash match, would not eliminate it.
Okay.
Okay, can I give a?
When you're looking at donation of land, I personally have a problem with that because you're talking about one building out of a row of buildings there that's tied to the courthouse. And so I think that creates somewhat of a problem when you're talking about one office space, one office building, donating land to a private, and it is a private enterprise. I think that creates some problems for me as far as the land donations are concerned. Okay, you've heard the motion, you've heard the second. Any further discussion?
Okay. I'm not sure we've defined tweak.
Define tweaking?
Right. And I just want to, because that determines which way I'm going to vote. And Mr. Seeley, would you like to define tweak since it's your motion?
Well, I think we have to look at the impact that we're going to have to the back of the Commissioner of the Revenue's office and the museum. And I think that's the place where we have the most amount of latitude to actually, because it does have impact. And I'm leaning on that we do have impact. It's the back of that structure's there, and I think we have some leeway in what we can do with that in this process. And I think getting the stakeholders in place would help define that after we do a little bit of discussion, maybe some preliminary work.
Yeah, I mean, to me, if you say go ahead with the original plan, basically the stakeholders had already had their input as the town did. And they'll say, okay, we talked about it before, we're going ahead. But you're saying tweak, and that's why I can't get my arms around tweak, because it's like subtle. The words are open to interpretation, and normally I would flirt as near the edge as I could, but I think in this case we need to make sure we understand where the edge is.
Mr. Thomas, give me a definition of what you see as tweak. Maybe that'll help.
No, you don't want my definition.
Can we not say that when we talk about tweaking, and maybe your motion include, if we are allowed to spend money on the Commissioner of Revenue's office,
Right.
to bring it up
That's
to meet the standards
okay.
here, then that's within the terms of tweaking as far as we're concerned.
That is,
And
that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Chairman, I apologize. I wonder if, I think what we all feel like is since we won this grant, we've had this other cool opportunity come up in the form of a museum. And we all would like to see that move forward, and maybe even the old jail, if we could. What if after your discussion, this motion moved forward, and you all said, with that understanding in mind, that the town would love to see that museum enhanced from this grant and the old jail, or whatever else we could legally get away with. What if one of the stakeholders, if you're going to have a committee that moves forward with this, and one member is your county staff, one is the town staff, one is the sheriff's department representative, whoever has a stakeholder in this thing, what if we made somebody from VDOT a member of that committee, and we try to push it just as far as we can, and we've got him there to say, nope, can't do that. Yes, you can do that. What if a member of that team is there to answer those questions, and is a member of that committee, so that we can take it just as far as we all want to subtly say we want to take it, you know?
And David, under normal circumstances, I would say you're exactly right, and I believe what you're saying. I've just been burned by experience, and Mr. Akers will tell you, I don't know if Mr. Ashcraft is here, but the state told us what we could do at our landfill. $1 million later, after a lawsuit, they changed their mind.
Right.
So I mean, you know, and it's sad to not have any faith. It really is sad. But I have to go on what I think I can do, and you know, we've all said things that were right.
Mm-hmm.
Bobby's right in that the environment has changed. There's no, before it was a really big idea because you had to go to the treasurer's office and then run across to the Commissioner of Revenue's office to get your tag and then go back over there and pay, and it was just stupid.
Right.
So we were gonna close the whole street. You could walk leisurely, sit out there, have your lunch. Great idea.
Yeah.
Now that was a few years ago.
Yeah.
I gotta pay